Hey, everyone, and welcome to your favorite cybersecurity podcast. I mean, it's our favorite cybersecurity podcast as well, not another demo. We are the cybersecurity podcast that promises you no acronyms, no marketing jargon, and no PowerPoint slides. I am your host, the trendsetter, Matt Nelson, and I have with me today the one and only Mr. Aaron Bragg. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Matt, you guys talk a lot about cloud security, but I don't just have a cloud problem. I have a clouds problem. I've got all the clouds. I've got AWS, I've got Azure, I got GCP, I got OCI, I got ABCD, I even have LMNOP, and I don't know how to maintain, secure, and organize all of these. Can you help me? To which I say, you are in luck, because for episode 54, I have with us Chris McHenry, who is a senior vice president of product management for Aviatrix, and we're going to talk about that exact thing. So, Chris, with that, please introduce yourself to the audience, and then tell us, in an era of like, I have too many meetings on my calendar, why should someone carve out 30 minutes to an hour to talk to Aviatrix?
Yeah, thanks. Good to be here. So little bit about myself. My name is Chris McHenry. I lead product at Aviatrix. Have been a long-time networking and network security nerd. Grew up in the zero trust world and did a bunch of stuff with microseg over the last like 8 years, which is a little bit like I think maybe I am a little bit of a masochist because any of these transitions are tough.
There's a little honesty right there.
Exactly right.
It's a good start. It's a good start.
But I'm super passionate about it and helping organizations improve their security posture. So at Aviatrix, one of the things that why would you take a meeting with us? It's a good question. I think you introed it pretty well. Like, cloud security is tough, and I think most of the people who are listening to this podcast are there with us. But I like to reflect back on what customers' security postures look like in data centers and what they look like in clouds. So in data centers, right, you had very good control. You had literally physical space, 4 walls. You had one cable to the internet. You could put a firewall there. Most of the places you could install agents on. And we had good active security controls. When we get to the cloud, like a lot of places, you don't have agents. And I am truly appalled with the network security posture. There was this whole like world, conversation around deperimeterization for a while. And it felt like people were giving up, right? But the reality is, I think actually the technology landscape didn't do a good job of serving the security teams when they moved to the cloud. So very quickly, if you want to get a hold of your perimeter and implement like good active security controls, the way that you used to be able to do it when you had a single cable, and you want to be able to do it across multiple different clouds, and you want to be able to do it fast and in a way that both the developers and the security teams are going to love, that is why you would take a meeting with us, right? Our goal is to help you quickly improve your security posture in the cloud.
So I think a lot of companies, like, this environment is a bit of a mess, right? One, because there's multiple platforms at play, but some of it, and I think you touched on a little bit of like, I think the cart came before the horse in terms of like people using the clouds before the security teams got there, and some other things. Maybe talk about like, how did we get here to where we now have to put these controls in place?
Yeah, it's funny, like I'll maybe my cynical hypothesis here is that one of the reasons cloud happened was because security teams were not fast enough, and the developers got frustrated with having to open change tickets for 2 weeks before they could get their application to work. And then all of a sudden cloud comes along and they're like, oh no, you can click a button. I can give you your server and it's going to be directly on the internet. You don't even have to ask anybody about a firewall rule, right? So there's this kind of like, that self-service piece, maybe there's a little bit of cynicism, is like, hey, this is a response to the fact that security was not moving quickly enough to be able to support the needs of the business and the needs of the application teams. But whatever happened there, right, app teams came first. And the target customer, like the target user for a lot of the clouds early on, was the application owners. And so we saw a lot of this shadow IT, a lot of this self-service. And the app teams, I think every organization should have security top of mind, but that's not really their primary, motivation. Speed is typically one of the primary motivations behind an application team. And the expertise, like cybersecurity is tough. Like the expertise in that arena is very specialized. I mean, we've got a shortage of people who really understand cybersecurity. So moral of the story is clouds wanted to make it easy for app teams. And to do that, they hid as much of the security, they hid as much of the networking as possible. Most of the cloud providers didn't even have firewalls until like 3 years ago, right? And it's all about ease of use, speed, and serving their primary user, which is the app dev teams. So now we got the security teams are coming in kind of after the fact, and they're thinking, holy crap, how do I get a hold of this thing? And that's a tough question, right? Because you don't necessarily want to lift and shift your data center stack. We can't move back to that time when security was slow. Like that's the opposite direction. We got to rethink the way that we do things. But if you want a good example of like how pervasive this is, most of the cloud security, the cloud providers allow internet access by default. Some of the foundational controls, if you go look at like a security group in AWS or a network security group in Azure, the outbound rules are all open. Inbound rules are open too, but outbound rules, like if I think about command and control traffic, if I think about loading payloads on server, like outbound egress is just as important as a part of the kill chain as ingress is. All of that is wide open. Azure is actually a little bit, they're the easiest one to get internet access, but good example of like it's the default, right? So the controls are not there in many cases, and it's something that the security teams have to wrestle with and wrangle.
I feel like when cloud first came out, there was this like secure by default thought process, like the cloud is going to be, and we actually kind of found the opposite of that, right? Is unsecure by default seems to have been where that all worked out.
There's this thing that all the cloud providers have called the shared security model, which is, I think that gives, it's really important, right? You're putting your data in another location and you have to be able to trust that, right? I mean, I worked for Cisco for a number of years, and we built data centers Cisco built some new data centers in like the late 2000s in Texas. And I mean, you've got like giant barbed wire fences and, these like pillars that are coming up to keep people from driving in and driving out. So, I mean, it's not just, the tech that needs to be secure. Like there's physical security aspects to it. There's multi-tenancy in the cloud. So shared security model is super, super important. But the other part, like the part about the shared security model that you have to realize is that half of that responsibility is still on you, right? It's on you as the organization to implement the appropriate controls to make sure that your data is secure where you have control, which is like most of the configuration on the cloud. And so it's, it's a little bit of a limited liability clause to say. It's both a promise, right, but also kind of a limited liability clause, and you got to take it seriously as an organization. How do you take action to appropriately secure your cloud?
Yep.
So, Chris, you talked a little bit earlier about different skills gaps, right? And that's something to where I think people tend to think black and white when they think of traditional cybersecurity skills, whereas, multi-cloud is its own kind of special use case, right? Because
100%.
Just because you have, this is how you kind of you hit on a little bit, or maybe Matt did with Azure. Like, if you have this understanding, this is how you do it here. That doesn't necessarily equate one-to-one like in AWS or Google Cloud Platform. What are some of the trends that you guys kind of seeing, because you guys have a unique position to where you can look across multiple industries? Yep. Fintech, healthcare, like mine. Are you seeing some of those companies at least understand there's a skills gap, or are you still seeing they're kind of living in a pie in the sky because cloud is supposed to fix X, Y, and Z?
So I think what you described is actually it's skills gaps in two directions, right? The app teams don't fully understand security, and the security teams don't fully understand cloud, right? So there's and then you introduce multi-cloud, which is, you know, lots of people tried to have single vendor infrastructure so that they could mitigate the skills gaps. And multi-cloud is a reality. All the cloud providers are competing with each other. They are delivering, I think the most interesting part is they're delivering the value add services on top. So Microsoft has this deal with OpenAI, right? And all of a sudden, everybody, you know, we see a lot of AWS and GCP customers even who are now in Azure, right? And so giving you the ability to choose from an application perspective and from a business perspective is really important. But now you've created this multi-vendor environment that you're responsible for securing. So I do think in the security realm, finding cloud agnostic and multi-cloud solutions is a massive trend. I'll give you two examples, right? So everybody likes to talk about Wiz, fastest growing company, I think fastest to 500 million ARR in history, right? Man, they really hit on something. What did they hit on? They hit on the fact that there's a skills gap for securing the cloud, and especially securing the cloud in a multi-cloud environment, right? So if you want additional proof, go look at Microsoft's CSPM product in Defender. It's multi-cloud. Like, this is Microsoft.
Hold on, acronym. You said CSPM?
Yep, sorry. They're cloud security posture management product, right?
All
They're
the PMs, we have so many PMs these days.
Yeah, great point, right? So it's like scanning the cloud for config, which I also think is really, really important. The primary reason it's important is because when customers moved to cloud, they moved all of their management systems onto the public internet. So config is even more important than it was beforehand, right? But this is effectively checking for best practice cloud config, checking for potential vulnerabilities, exploit paths, all that kind of stuff. So there's a bunch of vendors in the space, right? Wiz, Orca, there's some legacy ones too. Lacework was kind of in that space. A bunch of Prisma Cloud from Palo Alto. Microsoft has their own offering as well. But like looking at Microsoft's offering, it's multi-cloud. Like you can onboard your AWS and GCP accounts. So if you don't think security and looking at security platforms from a multi-cloud perspective is important, it absolutely is. And so, you know, where we really I think, and it's a lot of new vendors too, right? I mean, it's not the legacy players. It's players who grew up and said, I am going to be specialized for the cloud so that I can solve this multi-cloud security problem. That's us, right? We're just doing it at that layer of the stack that is network security, which I fundamentally believe is one of the most important controls that a customer has. If I look at the kill chain, right? The 100%. Ability to, right? If I look at the kill chain, the ability to stop attacks at multiple different places there are supported by network security, right? It's like, I think there's really three things that can stop an active attack. You've got endpoint security, network security, and AAA. It's that acronym: identity, authentication, access management, identity, right? So you got three things that can stop an active attack, and the lack of network security in the cloud drives me crazy. So that's really what we're passionate about, is like, how do I solve that problem for you and let you regain control of your perimeter across your very, very, very distinct and dispersed cloud environments.
So does the platform, or maybe describe how the platform helps from a configuration as well as a security standpoint, so that I have like one place to go to manage all of these different configurations? I guess explain the platform a little bit.
I think importantly, it's not just config, right? We reinvented. We didn't reinvent. We refactored and re-architected the concept of a network firewall for the cloud, right? So lots of different things that you need to do when you go into a cloud environment. And we want to make it super easy, and we want to make it look like cloud-like, right? So policy as code is super important for us. Our Terraform provider, which is one of the most common languages that customers use to automate their cloud environment, has almost as many downloads, has more downloads than all but one of the major firewall vendors out there. So if you're looking like who cares the most about integrating with an infrastructure as code pipeline, like that's right on board for us. But from a user experience perspective, we want to make it super, super simple. So the first thing that you do in the product is you onboard your cloud accounts. Like you give us permissions to go look and see where are your exit points. And I'm personally, I think that the place where we are most uniquely excellent is in egress controls. I think ingress network security is really most traffic now is web traffic, and the best way to do ingress security is in web application firewalls. So you've seen a lot of innovation in like Cloudflare and Akamai and things along those lines. Where network firewalls I think are super, super relevant is in egress and in east-west controls. So egress is one of the fastest places where you can get started with us. But we'll onboard your cloud accounts, and then we'll show you like, here's all of your internet egress, uncontrolled internet egress points. And then because we're deeply integrated with the cloud providers, you can literally click on a VPC or click on a VNet or use Terraform to provision it and deploy a microperimeter there. And so we'll automate the entire deployment process. You don't have to manage directly like any VMs or instances or anything along those lines. We manage all of that stuff for you. And we automatically make sure that the traffic is appropriately redirected through our control points so that you can then implement effective cloud security. So, and then you do that exact same process happens across all of the major cloud providers, AWS, Azure, GCP, and OCI. And it all happens in the same user experience, right? The same language, the same user experience. And now, once you do that, you have this multi-cloud virtual perimeter that you're managing centrally, and the policies centralized, the logging centralized, the visibility centralized. We want to make it super, super easy.
So what other tools you have, does someone have at their disposal when you go like a product like yours? Like, what kind of reporting do you have? So not only do you have like, in-house tools, but like reporting, that you can do to like, hey, other people are doing this, almost kind of like a field report.
Good question. Man, that's a good one. Okay. You guys are going to get me to talk a little bit about some of our announcements. It's conference season. So we've got Microsoft Ignite coming up and AWS reInvent. And one of the things that we're going to be showcasing there is this concept of egress security score in the cloud. And part of that is baselined against like what all of the other customers are doing in our environment. So you'll be able to see how your score relates to other customers. And then what it really is, like, it's a way of helping customers through the zero trust journey. So I want you to be able to quickly go from, hey, I have no controls, to I have a specific allow list of third-party services, third-party APIs, external services that this particular set of applications can actually communicate with. Because if I can move towards a zero trust posture, I mean, we can mitigate a lot of things from an exploit, with a life cycle of an exploit perspective. So we have this journey, and it's going to start out with, this is an unprotected network, VPC or VNet. This is you move that into a monitor mode where you can baseline the network traffic for, 30 days. We got some really cool stuff that we're doing with AI to help synthesize the baseline and make it understandable for the security administrator. And then
an acronym that doesn't need explanation.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Actually, that's not true. It really should be explained. Like
maybe, yeah.
I want it to be very practical and usable. But I'm not giving you too much information, because I would say go check us out. Check out a lot. We're watch us over the next couple of weeks. We're going to be shipping a bunch of demos. The goal is practicality. Again, like, I'm super, super passionate about real impact on customer environments. But yeah, monitor mode, then you can do things like blocking threats or doing geo-blocking, but that's not quite in the zero trust range. And then you get to a fully protected state where you have an explicit allow list. Now, what's cool is you can actually export the list that you come up with and then throw it into your infrastructure as code pipeline so that your developers can then manage it after that if you want to. But there's a lot of, and the goal is, how do I accelerate the zero trust journey? So I think we're one of the first firewall vendors that is integrating policy discovery and recommendation into that workflow, which has historically been something that the microseg vendors have really pioneered.
Or add-ons,
or
right? Like
add-ons to it,
products
right?
that
So
are
like,
basically add-ons to your firewall. Yep.
yeah, right. So that's a big I think that's a big deal, right? Is because, you know, it wasn't as important in the data center because you started with a firewall and then you added applications. Now I have applications and I'm adding a firewall. So policy discovery and recommendation is really important. So you'll see that integrated into the workflow. But I mean, just visibility is, I have multiple customers, like the security teams, who come to us and they deploy the product and they're like, man, I didn't even, just seeing this stuff is relevant. So super important to integrate with the ecosystem, shipping logs to your SIM. You know, I'm not a believer that I mean, there's a huge amount of vendor proliferation in security stacks right now, and we need to be very conscious of that. I think every responsible security vendor needs to be thinking about how they integrate into the ecosystem. So being able to ship logs to Splunk, being able to ship logs to Sentinel, like part of my goal is that your incident response teams and your SOC teams can just kind of continue business as usual. It's just that all of a sudden now they've got a lot more data that they can synthesize and use for threat hunting and things along those lines.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because I do think that is one of the most critical aspects for any security vendor out there, is that there is an interoperability with all of the other tools that an organization has, right? So you're not going here and there and all over the place when you're trying to, you know, just get some security done. We had an event recently where we had kind of a combo of like network people and security people, and we talked a lot about, like, you know, I think network people were the original security people, and then security kind of broke off from that, and now we're starting to see a little bit of a hybrid in some companies, or maybe they have like one person who's the go-between. Kind of same from the developer standpoint. Sometimes the security team has a liaison there as we're trying to stitch all of this stuff together. Where do you guys see most of your conversations happening? Because I can see, you know, bits and pieces of all of that. Some of the larger companies have a cloud security team as well, so they may get pulled in. So, like, where do you find most of your conversations are happening, and then how do you broaden that out to get a bigger audience?
It's a great question. I think that going back to the people are still figuring out security in the cloud, I think the org structure is not settled yet in terms of who's responsible for it. I mean, ultimately, InfoSec is responsible for it, but InfoSec doesn't necessarily have the ability to edit cloud configuration and like insert things into the network and all of that kind of stuff. So from an implementation perspective, we are talking a lot to networking teams. We're talking a lot to cloud architect teams. Security is typically a major stakeholder as a part of it, and so it comes on oftentimes either, hey, somebody realized that we don't have any firewalling in the cloud and we're failing an audit, and security comes and says, go fix this. But the people who are fixing it are typically people who have the ability to edit the cloud config. And that's a challenge. I think, honestly, your comment about networking and security teams is really on point, and I see it coming back. So, and I think actually orgs are slow to this change. I think the industry is actually ahead. If you go to Zscaler's website, as an example, or you go to Netscope's website, or you go to Fortinet's website, they all call themselves networking companies. Like, when you first think about these guys, you think about, oh, these guys are firewalling, their security, their zero trust, whatever they are, right? But they all call themselves networking companies. I was walking through San Jose Airport 6 or 7 months ago, and there was a giant banner for Cisco. It says, you know, everybody thinks Cisco, networking company, right? Banner says, if it's connected, it's protected. Like, their primary talk track is around security. These two worlds are reconverging, right? Because the network is a critical part of your security strategy. And I think it's really important for organizations to recognize that. and find ways to have converged skill sets between networking and network security, because it is really, really important. And so, in directly answering your questions, we're talking to a couple different teams, but I do fundamentally believe it's really, really important that these teams work together effectively, potentially even converge in some scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about working with Aviatrix as a company, if we're a customer or a potential customer, because I have a feeling that like a proof of concept could really uncover a lot of issues that maybe you think you have or you don't know you have, or maybe you're completely blindsided by. So can you talk us through like what that POC POV type of process looks like, the types of things that customers could expect to get out of that process?
So the first thing is we follow modern procurement mechanisms, right? So we're purchasable on the cloud marketplaces, and that's important because oftentimes you'll have buying programs, pre-negotiated buying programs with the cloud providers, so we can burn down your EDP as an example, but super easy to get started. Also, the cloud providers give us the ability to easily offer a free trial. So I do not want to follow kind of that legacy mentality around, hey, I'm an old school infrastructure vendor and I'm starting out on the cloud, and so, but you still got to go to your typical reseller to buy it. Like we want to make sure that the ability for you to try our software is easy and streamlined. So we offer a free trial on both AWS and Azure marketplaces. We have our primary consumption model today is a self-managed model where you deploy the software inside of your environment. But talking about announcements, I don't actually know when this podcast is going to go out, but in the next couple of days, we're going to be announcing our SaaS offering, which will also have a free trial associated with it. So super simple. Go to the marketplace, start the free trial, deploy our either go down the SaaS route and use our cloud-based console, or deploy the self-managed console, and then onboard your accounts. And when you do that, you'll start to get that security score when we release that in early December, which gives you insight into where are your uncontrolled internet egress points, and you can quickly start in the zero trust journey with us.
Yeah, good stuff.
That is a good segue to getting us to the end.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron, I learned something today. I learned that it's pretty cloudy out there. I mean, it's literally cloudy when I look outside, but also in everyone's environments, you are dealing with a lot of clouds. And there's probably a lot of stuff going on inside of your cloud environment from a security and a configuration standpoint that you don't even know about, that's leaving your company open to risk and attack. If you are worried about these things, which you absolutely should be, you should probably check out our friends over at Aviatrix. And Chris, thank you for being a part of this. Hopefully you had as much fun as we did. I thought this was a great episode. For everyone that's watching or listening, please do the like and subscribe, all of that fun social media stuff. And we will see you all for episode 55.